Welcome back, everybody. It's the Eagle Countdown. Thank you for being with us. We have a lot more attention online, eaglecountdown.com, because General Flynn a few hours ago tweeted that we would be here together with the great Sidney Powell, his attorney, and his friend. Although I have to say, Sidney, the best news for you, over the summer I got a tweet where he said, Sidney's now, Joe Flynn said, Sidney's now a member of the Flynn clan, the family. So she totally, and I think that's like being in the mafia. You're protected now, the Flynns. Well, welcome back. Eagle Countdown, of course, we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook Live, we're on Twitter. Folks are sending questions. I'm embarrassed to tell you, I was getting questions on here, John, and none of our team was telling me. I missed a couple of questions, one for Steve Daines, Senator Daines, and so I'm sorry about that, but send us your questions. Keep getting them. We'll make sure we do it. This time I'm looking at my list here. But, of course, Eagle Countdown, we were so excited 3 months ago. We were getting ready for Eagle Council. It was going to be today and last evening and tomorrow, and we were going to meet at the Trump Hotel. We were going to have all these events, and one of our favorite events is to have a big dinner where we celebrate the General Jack Singlaub Award for Service to America. General Singlaub is the chairman of the board of America's Future, an organization that's in the Phyllis Schlafly Eagles orbit, and he's an incredible hero. In fact, I've talked about his book over and over again. This book is called Hazardous Duty, and no less an authority than General Flynn, Mike Flynn, has said this is one of the greatest leaders, American leaders we've ever had, General Singlaub. He was a Jedburgh behind enemy lines in World War II. He then was a Jedburgh. He was then, after he was helping liberate Europe, France and Europe from the Nazis, they flew him to Japan. He was getting ready to invade Japan, and then they dropped the bomb. And then he served in Korea, Vietnam. He was fired by Jimmy Carter, which is even smarter and wiser. I mean, it's incredible. And then he went on in the 80s and was part of the group that was fighting against the communist threat in Latin America and South America. Just an extraordinary man. He's in his late 90s, and I'll never forget, John, you were there. We went down to Tennessee, me and John and General Flynn, yes, sitting on the back porch, and these two generals are actually telling war stories, and John and I are trying to look like we belong. I don't know, John, but it was extraordinary. So thank you for being here for this part. We wish you were at Eagle Council, and we'll do that in January, late January next year. But we're doing this virtual Eagle Countdown because, as we've said, so many of our folks are online virtually with us, and we're trying to get our strategies and pay attention for the coming 42 days. And as Phyllis used to teach us for our Eagle Council, we come together, understand the issues better, and then go out and go out and make a difference in the political arena. So in a minute, we're going to do the honor of this award. But first, we want to welcome Sidney Powell. And I told Sidney, I've been bragging for a while, Newt Gingrich sent, I think he wrote a column or sent a tweet or something, and then I talked to him and he said, you got to read this book, License to Lie. This is how many years ago? Maybe 3 or 4?
At least 2 or 3. And
so this License to Lie, a book that Sidney Powell wrote, it's extraordinary. She has already had at that point this long career in the federal courts and in working, and wrote a book about how the justice system was getting off base. And so first of all, welcome Sidney Powell to the Phyllis Schlafly Center.
Thank you. It's beautiful.
Our Eagles love you, and we're glad you're here.
I love them too. They've been so supportive of me and General Flynn, and their prayers and notes and cards. And
the second generation Eagle, where's Molly McCann? We get credit for that too. She's
yes,
a second generation. Noreen
That's
McCann,
right.
Her mom would be. She'd want us to make sure. She's one of the lawyers on General Flynn's team. So Sidney, back to the book for a second. License to Lie. You wrote that. When I read it, I thought, she's mad. You wrote it because what you saw was in your career as a lawyer, like, I'm doing this because the system is great, and you saw it. Tell me, you know what I mean? Tell me why you were writing that book.
Well, prosecutors are supposed to seek justice, not convictions. And that means, at least the way I was raised as a baby assistant U.S. attorney, if you've got to stand in front of the judge and tell him he cannot do something that's adverse to the defendant because that's not the law, then that's what you do. And so, I mean, there were multiple times in my career as a federal prosecutor in 3 different districts under 9 different U.S. attorneys from both political parties that I had to stand in court on behalf of the government and tell the judge he couldn't do something he wanted to do to send a defendant to prison who wasn't supposed to go to prison then, or remand him to custody, or exceed the rules in any number of ways. And they don't do that anymore. I haven't seen that done in a number of years. And what I've seen instead, particularly in the last 20 years, is a very core group of prosecutors who are willing to do anything to win a conviction, whether it be make up crimes by piecing together parts of different statutes to make a crime out of something that wasn't, or making up, quote, facts, end quote, which obviously aren't facts if they're made up, but they make up the story to fit their, quote, narrative instead of trying to find the truth. And they have sent innocent people to prison while they've hidden the evidence that showed they're innocent.
So you write that book, and we were just talking to one of our Eagles. He was telling me about a lawyer friend of his in Philadelphia, based on some of the work you did on the honest services, on this honest services catch-all that was used to basically destroy people, and then you come back later if you happen to win. You won one in the Supreme Court, and it didn't matter. You'd already had the lives destroyed. By the way, I'm reminded of it's not the same, but I'm reminded of the man who killed himself. Was it yesterday or today?
Yes.
Because he was charged by a prosecutor who was going to be charged with murder after the prosecutor's first round had looked at him. This Nebraska man, I apologize for not remembering his name. But
I think he was in Portland.
Yeah, and the devastation that's wrought. But back to our friend, our Eagle said, what she did gave hope for a whole bunch of other people across the country. But so you're writing that book and you're seething. When you read it, you're like, this woman knows what she's saying and she's laying it out, but you're seething. When you finished it, did you think, well, if I tell people this, they'll see it, they'll get it, it'll change? And did it? It didn't, right? For a while.
It came out during the Obama administration, and all the high-level people unnamed by name in it were very high-profile members of the Obama administration. So there was an affirmative effort, I am sure now, to suppress the book. I had all kinds of problems with Amazon. Every time anybody went to order it, they were told they couldn't get it. Boxes of books went missing. I never got paid for them. It was just one problem after the other. You go to order it and the dogs of Amazon error message comes up, that kind of thing.
So you finally get it out, but still nothing was really changing. The irony of this is that one of the sort of heroes of the book was the judge who's in the case now, who was at least then looking and saying, why are these prosecutors lying to me or misleading me? But nothing really changed. The same people were still in power. They were getting ready to go into the...
Oh, they were promoted.
Yeah.
I mean, they went from being handpicked by the Bush administration for the Enron task force jobs, where they broke all the rules, made up crimes, made up facts, made up everything, hid the evidence that showed people were innocent. And then from there, they became Obama's longest-serving White House counsel, deputy director of the FBI, Andrew Weissman, Matthew Friedrich, who then micromanaged the prosecution of former Alaska Senator Ted Stevens, changing the balance of power in the Senate, costing him that Senate seat.
One after another. And
Yep.
and what you, if I can go back and read backwards, when you read that book, you say, well, that looks like the permanent class in Justice Department, almost looks like the deep state, if you want to call it, but it was a permanent class of bureaucrats going in and out, and nothing was really changing. And so then you're watching the dynamic in the Trump administration saying, aha, now they've got some guys and gals in there that know what the score is. We'll see what they do. One of them, you didn't know him at the time personally, is General Flynn, who gets pushed out. And you're seeing, here comes Weissman and Mueller and the same crew back again, right?
Well, no. I knew as soon as Leslie Caldwell, who's also in the book as one of the villains, brought Andrew Weissman back into the Department of Justice to head the fraud section, that we were looking at what I was going to call a deep state transition team put in place to affect what we now know to be the coup, essentially.
Right.
And then when Mueller and Weissman joined on the Mueller hit squad, that was quite apparent.
So as of today, is President Trump, one of the things we've done, we put together this book and of the top 100 promises made, promises kept, trying to remind voters, people, hey, this is what Trump ran on, this is what he did. There's lots of them. There's 100 we have in here of the promises kept by this president. I ask everybody on Eagle Countdown, all our great speakers, we had Senator Grassley in earlier today, and Senator Cruz will be in tomorrow, and all sorts of folks, what's their favorite, their most noteworthy promise kept? So I'll ask you that, although I want to ask you a follow-up on whether he's been able to take on the deep state. But do you have one that you say, oh, that's one thing I knew the president ran on, and he kept that promise?
I think mine is a bit broader. The whole concept of making America great again is taking us back to where we should have stayed the whole time, and that is on our founding principles. Whether it be our view of economics to release the restrictions that have, just crushed the business community, or whether it be going back to constitutionalist judges that we have so desperately needed. Everything he's done, I think, to make America great again has helped to, or been based on restoring focus on those fundamental principles of liberty and freedom and justice.
Obviously we're talking with Sidney Powell. We're getting comments on Facebook. One of the people said, Sidney Powell is such a great patriot. We're so excited she's coming to Iowa on October 17th. So maybe she'll decide she's running for president while she's in Iowa. But but people love it. You're getting comments. I want to go back though. President Trump, he gave a speech on October 25th, 2016, which he later described to people, a rally, that he said to a journalist, that was the first time he used the word drain the swamp. And he said the crowd reacted. They were like, whoa. And next night he did it again, he said. This is just 10 days before the election. And he said the reaction, and this is a guy that knows reactions, he said it was unbelievable. Has he been able to drain the swamp?
Well, I think he's been robbed of his first 4-year term, frankly. And the swamp calculated and deliberately set to rob him of it. What he's accomplished in the face of all that is extraordinary. I mean, he's accomplished more than the prior, 5 or 10 presidents all put together to restore the American dream for so many people. But we've got to get him another term. Can I make the breaking news at Sidney Powell's calling for an extra term, a third term, because this first one didn't count? I think the president likes to do that at rallies. John, what do you think? John himself is an attorney and comes from a family of attorneys, notwithstanding Phyllis was an attorney too, but your father, you've been an observer of what the same thing we're talking about. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the American people didn't realize that the swamp extended to the Justice Department. That was something of a surprise. We knew there was a swamp in the State Department and the Department of Homeland Security and the Immigration and so on. So, but for our people in our group who have been supporting General Flynn, I think you can hear from Sidney's opening that no one has been better prepared from her training and experience to deal with the General Flynn outrage than Sidney Powell. And all of her work is available for everyone to go and see on the internet. Her wonderful briefs can be found at courtlistener.com. And if you want to listen to her argument before the 11 judges of the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, you can do that. I warn you, though, it's 3 hours. 4 hours. But if you fast forward, which is not easy to do, but if you get to the last 3 minutes of her presentation where she pulled it all together in a marvelous way, I mean, it was worth it to listen to that.
Thank you.
Sidney, if we can talk about the General Flynn case, I know you do quite frequently, and we can now.
Sure.
But General Flynn's case, he was represented along the way by lawyers, and you came in the middle. And you had a thought that, hey, I see who these players are, what they're doing to him. But that was how many years ago now? 2 years?
Oh, no, it's only been about 16, 17 months.
And it's dragging on. All say they're doing this to keep him silent. They're doing this to hold him out of this time where his voice could be so big.
Yes, they are. I have no doubt about it. And just to increase and inflict additional punishment. The process is the punishment because they know the case has to be dismissed.
And is it at this point? Is it the judge who's dug in, or is it just the whole environment?
It's the judge in particular who is dug in.
And what happens next? For folks that have been watching General Flynn, they are hoping and praying that they can see him, hear his voice, because he's effectively the most popular American who cannot, because the way they put him in this box, speak general. He does a few things, right? He writes on key things, but not much. What's the next steps? What are the series of steps?
A week from tomorrow, we have a hearing back in front of Judge Sullivan, who took the unusual act of filing his own brief in the D.C. Circuit asking for rehearing en banc.
Uh-huh.
And we argued he's so invested in the case, there are no circumstances under which he can proceed without disqualifying himself. He just is too invested in it. But he is proceeding, and the Court of Appeals did not remove him from the case. So we've got
So that happens a week from today?
A week from tomorrow.
A week from tomorrow, and that'll be one of these marathon, will it be one of these marathon, 5-hour hearings? Will the judge, and are there cameras in that court? There's no cameras in that court.
No, I don't think, right now it's scheduled to be a telephone conference.
Oh.
I would guess it's going to stream.
Okay.
So that the public can hear it. But I don't think there are going to be cameras.
And what are the possible results of it?
Well, if they're going to follow the law, the only possible result is for the motion to dismiss filed by the government to be granted, because every single case in the country results in granting a government motion to dismiss. It's an issue of separation of powers. Only the Department of Justice can bring a prosecution, and for whatever reason they can terminate it. In this case, it happens to be over 100 pages of exculpatory evidence that was hidden from General Flynn, and the entire case was manufactured by the FBI. Rather significant findings in the last 6 or 7 months.
Right. So what do we get? What do we get after that hearing? What do we get? The possibilities are the judge comes into court and he says, "I now realize Sidney was right. I'll let the whole thing go." Right? Okay, that's not going to happen, right?
I'm sure that's not going to be the phrasing, even if it happens to be the end result.
But the other possibilities, not more likely, is he comes in and says, "That's all interesting. I'll get to it, and I'll go back to my chambers." And as I say, honor among pick the term you want, but they if somebody says it's going to take them 5 weeks to write an opinion, it's difficult to make them do something, right? Or
yes.
Or he wants to explain his signature on the dismissal. He could probably take 8 weeks through the election.
It'll be interesting to see how long he takes. The D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals told him to do it with dispatch. But we're ahead of the schedule he set by far already, because he was only going to ask for a scheduling conference by the 21st of September. So it'll be interesting to see.
Questions from some of our folks on Eagle Countdown and YouTube and Facebook. If someone as prominent and as honorable as General Flynn, with a long track record of service to his country, can face such an unjust prosecution, what does that mean for the average citizen? It seems pretty scary. It's
terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying.
Could we focus them on John, just to get him off of you and me? You know what I mean, John? Look into John. It seems, but seriously, when they say Biden is running for president, for example, and they won't say who his Supreme Court justices are because he won't give a list now, but we do know who would be in his Justice Department, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's the same people that have been doing this all along.
Yeah,
right?
It would essentially be the Mueller task force put in charge of the Justice Department, with the possibility of even Andrew Weissman being Attorney General or Deputy Attorney General.
Right. They're not gonna quit, is my point. They're not gonna go, oh wow.
No, they will in fact choose more targets, and it will be political retribution on everyone who dared bow their backs against their oppression to begin with.
I'm going to wear my Creeps on a Mission t-shirt just for Sidney Powell.
Awesome.
Sidney Powell, Creeps on a Mission. Is it creepsonamission.com?
Yes,
creepsonamission.com. You just trust me, go there and you'll see the shirt and you'll buy one. It'll make you smile, if not.
And blow up the graphic to see all the detail, because you can't see all the detail on the shirt, but the graphic is hilarious.
Okay, another question for you. Will the people that did this, will they be prosecuted? Will they be held accountable?
Well, I have several reasons to think that they are certainly being investigated. So it depends on what all they did and what knowledge they had when they did it.
Is that the Durham report, or is it different than that?
I think it's part of the Durham investigation.
Durham investigation. John?
Well, is there enough time left in the president's first term to get that done?
Not finished, no.
No.
I mean, we've got to do everything humanly possible to get the vote out in person to make sure he gets a second term. Yes, we need more than 52% of every precinct in person voting for President Trump.
Now I want to. Remember, you got this. You're getting this award, the Singlaub Award. Flynn got it, but General Flynn got it before. It's a big deal, and it's for service to the nation. So I'm playing it up. But your other book, which I'm embarrassed is over there, so I don't remember the name.
Conviction Machine.
Conviction Machine, which is a broader critique in a way. The first one is, if I could say, Sidney Powell pissed, and she wrote what they did. This one, Conviction Machine, your co-author and you said, hey, this system, here's what it's done to generate a conviction machine. And it's your co-author is not necessarily a conservative, right? He's a kind of, I don't know what you'd say, a civil libertarian.
Yes.
And so talk about because what it seems to me what you're saying is, in this fight, License to Lie, I saw how these guys were messing it up. And this book is, they took the system and messed the system up.
Yes, they have completely abused and distorted the system and the process to achieve their social and political objectives. When the law is supposed to be a way of resolving disputes, not targeting individuals for destruction. So it's been totally perverted by these people that are willing to do anything to win at any cost for their own personal objectives.
Is the but what is their objective? Is it just sort of power? Is it greed? Is it so when I look at somebody, and I don't know if you want to do, yeah, you do, you're Sidney Powell, you do this all the time, but I mean, Andrew Weissman, he leaves government, he throws down his laptop and says, I was righteous, quits in such a way that if you're you and you're saying, where's the guy that did all this, he's already gone back to $1 million a year job. And I think Comey is down at William and Mary Law School teaching ethics. Ethics. He's not even teaching like civil procedure. He's teaching ethics. So is it just that they're almost like a plaything? That for them it's just power and out to make money, is there an ideological angle? What is your sense of it?
Well, for one thing, their hubris knows no bounds. So they're so narcissistic they can justify anything they want to do from their own perspective. Another is pure power and their lust for that. For Weissman, Mark Levin said it best, I think. He views these prosecutions in which he destroys people as blood sport.
Does the President of the United States, have you ever talked to him personally, you and him?
Yes.
Does he know what's going on?
I think he's got a pretty good idea. He's
Because
witnessed it up close and personal now.
Yeah, it's not a theoretical question for President Trump anymore. So what happens next? Not for General Flynn, but in general in this country. What Trump wins a second term? What is the next step that we need to believe can happen?
Well, the people that are responsible for all aspects of the coup and the manufactured prosecutions of General Flynn and probably others need to be held accountable with indictments until they are actually indicted for things like obstruction of justice and their own perjury to Congress and manufacturing documents, any number of things that they are. There's a lot of evidence that they actually did. We don't have a rule of law because so far it's only been Republicans that have been prosecuted, and wrongly so, when the actual crimes were committed by the Democrats and the people in power. So we need a massive effort to root out corruption in our government itself and all of these people to be held accountable for it.
Early in your career, you were an assistant United States attorney, so a federal prosecutor for a decade, maybe a lot of legal work. A lot of times people are prosecuted for like a hot minute. They do like a year, and then they come out, and the rest of their life they say, I was a federal prosecutor. You did 10 years, a lot of litigation, a lot of cases. But in 10 years as an assistant U.S. attorney, one of the things you would do is work hand in glove with the FBI.
Yes.
With special agents, that your whole case would rely on what they put together and what they did. And I suspect your experience, I was in law school with Jeff Jensen. He was an FBI agent going to school at night. And Jeff Jensen's like this 6'2", totally together, hotshot guy. Back then I remember being like, wow, that's Jeff Jensen. Like, he just was an FBI agent. They were the best of our people, trained to be the best. They put aside their biases. I mean, he probably had biases, but he put them aside to be an FBI agent. Today, after what we've seen, can we reform the FBI? Can you actually fix it, or is is it rot so much from the top that it's sort of damaged it beyond belief. Jimmy Gagliano, who's on CNN, and he was sort of a half defender of Comey, said, I don't believe it, I don't believe it, I know our system. And then about a year ago maybe, he wrote and said, I'm sorry, I got to say, I see it, this is not acceptable, it's beyond the pale.
Yes, I think he actually said when he read our briefs, he realized and saw the exhibits we attached.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, all of those are available free at my website, SidneyPowell.com.
SidneyPowell.com. Okay, so back to this. Can you, the FBI, you know, early in your career, this was how you did this. You honorable people and all. And not every FBI agent's bad, but it's pretty endemic at the top.
Yes, I think it's probably permeated a lot more than the top. Otherwise, people would have come forward in outrage at what was going on. I mean, granted, they tried to keep the group small, but there were a lot of other people that had to know.
Right.
In fact, we now know, actually, I think we learned it during one of the IG reports, that there was the agent in New York that had seen all the Hillary Clinton emails and tried to report it, and they came and wiped his computer.
Right. Right. So can we reform the FBI?
Yes, it can be reformed.
Will you do it?
I might.
John?
Sidney, let's see. We haven't mentioned the Attorney General yet, Bill Barr. He seems like a man with some very excellent qualities. He speaks well. He's willing to go toe-to-toe with the Democrats in Congress. And yet he hasn't cleaned house in his Justice Department. How do you size up Attorney General Barr?
I really like him. I think he's a man of extraordinary integrity, and he understands the importance of the rule of law. I am looking forward to seeing some indictments soon. I think that's going to be the biggest indicator of actual progress in cleaning things up. There may be more that can be done to accomplish those objectives inside the department itself, but I know also it's not as easy looking at it from the outside as it might be trying to deal with it from the inside.
I'll never forget
a very diplomatic response.
That was I'll never forget just to tell this anecdote, because a lot of our folks, so we on our Eagle Countdown, a lot of our issues we talk about on the March for Life. All the kids that were marching at the March for Life, marching down Constitution, I guess it is, where the department, where the Attorney General's office is, and there's a little balcony, and out came Bill Barr, and my daughter was at the Catholic school, and they were all like, "Who's that guy?" And I said, "It's Bill Barr," and they chanted, "We love Bill Barr," and he waved, and you know, most people in that kind of thing, the political, it feels like to me, would have come out, shown their face, to take a picture. He stayed for like an hour and a half. He was watching. It was all the crowd down below, and it was pretty cool. But
I think he's surrounded by a lot of alligators.
Now, explain that.
Yeah.
Who are the alligators?
Well, you don't have to say who they are, but what do you mean?
Well, I mean, I think that, Obama, without a doubt, embedded everyone he could possibly embed into the civil service position, despite the fact they were originally in political appointments. They then, for the last 2 years of his term, put him in every civil service position or senior executive service position they could find for them. So he's absolutely surrounded by people who are loyal to Obama and his view of the law and the world, which is not the United States Constitution.
The State Department, when Trump won, the State Department was rapidly transitioned a whole bunch of people to these civil service jobs, and they as you say, embedded them in to wait out the plan was to wait out the administration. People, by the way, are saying they want you to run for president now, also in 2024. So that's pretty good.
I hope I don't have to do that.
No, that wouldn't. You know what I was going to say? I met with somebody from the White House, and they said, Trump loves the term from real estate. He says, I like the killers. There's all these killers, like people that are not afraid to fight. Sidney Powell's kind of she is not afraid to fight, like U.S. Grant. So You're the second question we ask all of our Eagle Countdown people, and then we'll get to talking a little bit about Singlaub, so we can leave you alone to your a lot of work you have to do. But we ask people, what should they do in the next 42 days, even after that? You know, if you care about what's going on in the country, our Eagles all across the country, they care about these issues at every level. Someone said about your book, if it weren't for Sidney and her book, it feels like we wouldn't even know about this stuff. We wouldn't know about Weissman. I mean, Gingrich is at the middle of so many things, but Gingrich at a certain point was telling people like me, read her book. And then I read her book, I was like, holy cow. I mean, it's so, but we wouldn't have known this if it hadn't happened. And then General Flynn at a certain moment, and his wife and his brother said, you got to go get Sidney Powell to do this, right? And he does it. Nobody, usually at that high level of a litigation, you don't fire your lawyers. It's a tough thing to do, right? Because you're in for a lot of, so all this miraculous stuff. But what can people, we feel like the game is rigged. So between
rigged.
So between now and Election Day, how do we unrig it? And by the way, let's say it differently. If they did this to General Flynn, if they did this to lots of citizens, now they know they have to do it to the elections. Won't they do it to the elections?
Oh, they're pulling out all the stops to do everything they can to create fraudulent ballots, stuff the ballot box in more ways than one, then plan to litigate and throw everything into massive chaos for the elections to try to make it come out the way they want it to come out. So what we need to do is talk to everybody we know, all of our friends, family, talk about it in the beauty shop, talk about it in the grocery store, talk about the real issues and all that President Trump's been able to accomplish everywhere you go between now and the election. Be willing to work the polls, be willing to work supervising the vote count, be willing to work anywhere, anytime to make sure the election is fair and the rules are followed, and to get everybody out in person to vote for President Trump. We've got to have another 4 years to begin to straighten this out, and then we're going to need a decade or more to really completely turn it around.
Well, I don't think I need to justify on our Eagle Countdown listeners how we, and it was General Flynn along with General Singlaub and myself and John, a few others, talking about who to honor this year, that are honoring the General Singlaub Award for service to America. John, do you want to say, I know you're on General Singlaub, but I want to say a little bit more about him and his life. And I know you always have a way of saying what could be or needs to be said. Do you have any thoughts on General Singlaub?
Well, General Singlaub had such a great career, military career and civilian career. My mother, Phyllis Schlafly, was very close to General Singlaub. They worked together on a number of projects, and including in the last couple of decades of her life on the board of America's Future, a great organization which is about 75 years old. Mm-hmm. And someone who is just solid on everything, on every issue that comes across the line. As General Singlaub is someone who can rely on, and so it's a great symbol for this award.
And if you read Hazardous Duty, this book, General Singlaub's book, it's his memoir, and it talks about when he was a young man. He wanted to go to West Point, and he wanted to go to the military academy, and he went and he got to his congressman. His congressman said, sorry, your father's the wrong political party. I can't let you into West Point. And General Singlaub said, okay, and he went to UCLA, and he took all the courses that he could find at UCLA that matched West Point. And his mother had made him study French as a boy. I think she was a librarian. And then at UCLA, he took Japanese. So by the time he was and he joined the Army, and he became a jumper, and he was jumping down at Fort Benning. And the famous Wild Bill Donovan, who was heading up the OSS, sent down, I think it was Casey, and said, find me some guys who can come down. And they got Singlaub. And Singlaub spoke French and Japanese, and they said, put him in. And he became a Jedburgh. And if you don't know about Jedburghs, the Jedburghs, 3 at a time in plain clothes, jumped behind enemy lines and ran the resistance. And of 300 of them, 100, I get goosebumps, 150 were executed. When they got caught, you were executed. They gave them cyanide caplets, it's in the book, and they famously gave them cyanide caplets to take if you got caught, and Singlaub refused to take his with him. He just left it behind because he didn't plan to get caught, and he didn't. And so he runs the resistance in the war, and there's a little street in one of the towns in France named after Singlaub, General Singlaub. And after he finishes the war, they say, this is great, behind enemy lines. And they said, oh, you speak Japanese. You're going to the Pacific. And they sent him to the Pacific. And he was with Ho Chi Minh as they prepared to invade Japan. And they knew when they invaded Japan, they would lose hundreds and hundreds of thousands. He was going to parachute in first and take out the bridges and then start in behind the thing. And then they dropped the bomb. And so he didn't have to invade. And then after that, it continues. All kinds of amazing stories. But about 6 years ago, General Singlaub, who was friends with Phyllis and I knew, sent me speeches by this guy named Mike Flynn. And he said, this guy, Singlaub said, you got to watch this guy. This guy is the guy to watch, just General Mike Flynn. And I said, okay, and so I printed them out and I had them. And then years later, we met. So General Flynn has helped with this award. General Singlaub has been our anchor on this. And so we give out an award every year. And we're going to make Sidney come back to our Eagle Council in January, February, so we can do a bigger ceremony with all our people there. But this is the General Jack Singlaub Award for service to America. The first awardee was General Mike Flynn, and today you can hear from her career, not just as General Flynn's lawyer, although that's extraordinary, but her career now for 25 years of saying America needs something different. And I think, God wills it, these next years she's going to be one of the people that really helps us continue to make America great again. So we're just so honored you could be with us, and all you people at Eagle Countdown watching, you're jealous because we're all going out after this to go out to dinner and hang out, which is the best part of these kinds of things. So, but we just want to say how much we appreciate you and how much we know God's put you in our nation's history in a very special way. So we're happy to give you an award, but more to say thank you for what you're doing.
No, thank you. There's no way I can measure up to what General Flynn and General Singlaub have done for this country or anybody else that served in our military. I mean, those are just extraordinary, heroic accomplishments. But I am very honored to receive this.
Well, and I'll do this just to get in trouble, but you're young. See, Flynn and Singlaub are older guys. Now, General Flynn will kill me, but General Singlaub is, 97, I think. So you got a lot of work to do. So I think we're going to take a break and show a commentary and come back, and we'll just continue to thank Sidney, and then we got one more guest, I think, on Eagle Countdown. So if you have questions or comments, keep them coming. Thank you, Sidney, for being here and for everything you do. And we'll be watching, or John will be listening next week to the hearing, and he'll give us an update on that. So we'll be right back. Thank you.